I'm turning my fans into NPCs and adding them to Minecraft, where they can duke it out for the title of #1 fan. While I gear them up with custom AI, random gear, and powerful abilities, I'll be answering questions sent in by you in this special AMA-style video. Minecraft recently added a new type of entity called mannequins. This is a new mob that looks like a player. You can summon it in with commands and change just about everything about it. Most importantly, you can make it look like any other player, so I can, for example, summon a mannequin that looks just like me. That's about the limit of my understanding of these guys, so let's run a couple of tests to get an understanding of how they work. So I do know that unlike markers and things, they do have hitboxes. We can go ahead and turn hitboxes on to be able to see that it should be pretty much the same as a player. It even has the eyes up where its eyes should be. And that means if we hit it, yep, okay, it does react, it does take damage visually, and also gets knocked back appropriately. I assume it probably has the same health as a player. I've hit it a couple of times, so let's try swinging this sword. Yep, 2 more times. That should take it down from probably what it started at, 20 HP to 0. Now, the unfortunate thing is I'm pretty confident that these don't have any AI. So obviously right now it's just standing still, but even if I change to survival mode, then it's not going to react at all. It does react to being hit. Pretty sure I can push it around. Yep, that's working fine, but it's not going to chase me or anything. Now, for most mobs, if you summon them with another mob riding on top of them, the passenger mob's AI is going to take over, but use the stats, specifically the movement stats, of the vehicle. And this is how we have things like spider and chicken jockeys. The skeleton or the zombie's AI is controlling the spider or the chicken, which is why they still chase after you while you're in survival mode, even though chickens in particular are never hostile to the player. Unfortunately, as we saw through that entire clip here, the pig's AI is not controlling the mannequin at all. Unfortunately, the mannequin isn't able to be controlled in this way. So mannequins do have some basic stats and attributes that we'll be able to rely on, but if we want to make these guys fight each other, I'll need to come up with my own custom AI system to get them moving and attacking. Let's get a couple of these guys spawned in here. But before I get working on that, let's answer your guys' first AMA question. All of these questions were sent in by fans in my Discord server, which you can join with the link in the description. This one comes from one of my Patreon supporters, Sepheron. Sepheron asks how long I've been playing Minecraft, and I believe at this point it's now been probably about 15 years, maybe 14 or 15. I started way back in alpha, just a little bit after they added the Nether. Suffice to say, Minecraft has changed quite a lot since then, but I've really enjoyed keeping up with every single update. From wolves and weather and maps to eventually hunger and strongholds, and now things like trial chambers and copper golems. So to get started with some basic movement, let's start by spawning in one of these Powerups here, and then we'll spawn a piglin brute over here and have it set so the piglin brute is a valid target for the mannequin. We can do that. And okay, great. The mannequin is following the piglin brute. Now, not too closely. Once it gets within a nice range, then it just kind of stops and stays staring at it. Obviously, that'll change once we add combat, but for now, we are able to make it follow specific targets. And then I can even make it follow other players, which means I get this super cursed image of getting chased by myself. Okay, admit it, you've had this exact nightmare. So now that we have basic movement done, I want to make it so that it isn't able to target things that it can't see. So fortunately, the mannequin is just going to kind of stay still there. Let's set up a short little wall here, and we'll spawn the piglin brute behind it. And that mannequin isn't going to be able to target it and walk towards it until the piglin brute gets out from behind the wall from the mannequin's perspective, which should wander out on its own pretty momentarily. He's going to come out here, and then the mannequin sees him and is able to walk towards him. But if we teleport that piglin brute back on this side of the wall, unfortunately that mannequin is still going to think it can see it and continue to target towards it and move towards it, but obviously gets stuck on the wall. The mannequin also doesn't really know what to do when it encounters a one-block wall like this. It isn't able to jump right now, since of course it isn't using any actual AI or pathfinding. I'm just giving it motion in the direction of the entity that it's targeting. So let's go ahead and implement some basic jumping so it can get over ledges like this, and we'll also make it so that it is able to occasionally lose line of sight with the mob that it's targeting. But before we do that, the next AMA question comes from Discord user Robby, who asks what my favorite mod is. Now, I can't say that I use a lot of content mods in my day-to-day. I have some mods that I have for my recording, like Iris for shaders and things, but I wouldn't really call those my favorite because they're not adding anything substantial to the game that I play with. However, I do play with other people's data packs quite a lot, and I think I would have to say that my favorite data pack, at least the one that I play with most regularly, is Mine Treasure by FieryZane. I find that it pairs very well with some of my other data packs like New in Town that I frankly can't play without anymore, and so it's nice to just have that additional reward for normal gameplay that I would already be doing that also just accentuates that gameplay. It makes it more fun. So we've got our little wall here for the mannequin to jump over, and I've also got a small little box over here prepared so that we can teleport the piglin brute in there relatively quickly and see how the mannequin responds. So let's spawn our mannequin right over here, and then we'll get the piglin brute over here. And yep, looks like the mannequin's able to leap over that wall without any issue, even following the piglin brute directly behind it as it jumps over and on top of the wall too. Great. And then we can come over to our command block here and teleport the piglin brute. The mannequin is going to initially have a little bit of vision of it as it gets teleported because its head is just going to barely peek over this wall here, but then it's going to give up until the piglin brute willingly wanders out of its fort of safety. We can teleport the piglin back in here, and I've made it so that the mannequin does try and continue chasing after a target that it's lost sight of for just a little bit so that it can follow it behind something that is like a short wall or something. And then after a few seconds, if it can't follow it, if it can't find it anymore, then it stops and it loses that target. I suppose it's about time I explain how I'm actually making this work. For selecting the target, the mannequin is doing a ray cast towards any valid target entities, in this case just piglin brutes and actually other mannequins. Of course, it's excluding itself. And then it's applying a unique tag to that entity that is based on the unique ID score of the mannequin. I'm both applying and checking that tag with macros, which isn't super great for performance in high quantities, but at the low doses that I'm working at here, it shouldn't be any problem. Then, to give it motion towards any entities that have that unique tag, I'm having the mannequin summon a marker at exactly position 00 in the world, which is roughly that way, but with just a little bit of offset, and then I can apply that special position of that marker entity to the motion NBT of the mannequin to make it move in that direction. It's a little bit complicated, but it's actually relatively easy in code. Now I'm only changing the motion on the X and Z axes, and that leaves the Y axis free to handle the jumping. If we kill this piglin brute and summon a new one up here, the mannequin is going to move towards it and try to jump up since there is no block, but it's not getting any Y motion in the direction of the mob because that would end up making it fly. So instead, I'm just applying a flat value to its motion NBT, specifically the Y value of that motion NBT, which is what makes it look like it's jumping. All pretty cool stuff, and thankfully relatively easy. Of course, right now it's just moving in the direction of the mob. Once we start adding combat AI, that's when things are going to get quite a bit more complicated. But before we do that, it's time for another AMA question. This one comes from Discord user Taryn, and they ask, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized sniffers or one sniffer-sized duck? This is the kind of quality content I was hoping for. Duck or chicken-sized sniffers are certainly a lot easier to deal with individually than one sniffer-sized duck or chicken. Sniffers are pretty huge. But 100 sniffer-sized ducks, that's a lot to work through. I think they'd probably be able to take me out just as a matter of attrition. So even though I don't like my odds of a sniffer-sized duck, I think that's what I'd have to go with because I think it's probably better just in terms of pure energy compared to 100 duck-sized sniffers. That was a good one. Keep them coming. To help make testing combat easier, I've implemented a trigger so that I can toggle whether the mannequins are able to fight or not. So I'm able to summon them nice and easily like this. We can make sure they're all set up, and then we can go ahead and toggle that, and they'll start to move towards each other and deal a little bit of damage to each other. I've made it so that mannequins have a 50% chance of actually trying to hit a target that they have in range. And this allows us to get just a little bit of randomness in terms of when they are attacking each other, so they're not just hitting each other at the same time every time, and allows us to actually have a winner. We can set up a little hill like this and summon a couple of mannequins like this. Maybe we'll do 3 this time and see what happens. Let's do 4. And then once I use the trigger, they should start moving towards their closest targets. So let's do that. Okay, we've got some jumping. Good, they're able to get up and down the hill, and they end up all converging on one side, of course, as they knock each other around. And as the one that was on top, obviously, is also moving towards its preferred target. We got an all-out brawl as targets are changing constantly. It's not just one person trying to attack only one other person, or even all 3 ganging up on one. Of course, since they're all me, there's no real way to keep track of who actually won relative to their starting position. Now this is working pretty well so far. I think it is pretty cool, but let's add just a little bit more dynamism to these fights, make them a little bit more exciting. Let's spawn a couple mannequins here again, maybe 5 or 6 this time, and then we'll go ahead and toggle the combat on again. And I've made it so that they will try to jump when they're nearby a target, and if they're in the air, if they're falling as they are attacking, then they'll deal a little bit of extra damage. They'll deal a crit, and I've added some crit particles to show that. So now they're behaving quite a bit more like players. They're not jumping constantly. I think that would get a little old because they'd all be jumping at the same time. So just like with the attacks, there's a small chance, a random chance rather, that they will choose not to jump or choose to jump depending on your perspective. This is already so much more fun, even between just 2 mannequins. But we can go even further. I've made it so that there's about a 50% chance that one of the Powerups will spawn with a sword. We've got a stone sword, and then there's also a small chance for a diamond sword. Yep, we've got one right there. And these are going to allow them to deal some extra damage. Let's toggle that on. And yep, let's see if probably the diamond sword one should win out on top, and then the stone sword one should very easily be able to take out the unarmed one. Yeah, diamond sword definitely had the advantage there. Now this isn't just as simple as giving them a sword. While the mannequins do have several attributes like motion and health, they unfortunately don't actually have an attack damage attribute. You just physically can't set one for them. So I've had to co-opt the max absorption attribute, which they're just not going to use. That's related to golden apples and the absorption effect, and made it so that they have a base max absorption of 1, and then the swords have an attribute modifier to give them additional absorption. And then for the actual damage in the functions, I'm using macros to store that attribute value to storage, and then it uses that value as a macro argument in the damage command. And that allows us to have 2 different mobs. Well, that one had already taken some damage from the previous fight. But that allows us to have multiple mannequins that might deal different amounts of damage. I kind of breezed through all that, so let's get 2 AMA questions out of the way. This first one comes from Phoenix Flaming, who asks how old I was when I started making datapacks. Datapacks weren't added in name until 1.13, but few people know that the ability to make functions and package them in a world to be able to do many of the things that datapacks were able to do at the very beginning, though in a very minimized sense and with the old command format, was introduced in 1.12, one of the later versions of 1.12, and that's when I started working with them. I started work on New in Town in 1.12.3, 5? I don't remember. But that would have been in 2017, which would have made me 20 years old. This next question comes from FieryZane, who asks what my favorite data pack that I've made is. Now, personally, I can't play without New in Town anymore. I find it very, very difficult because I just love all the content that New in Town adds, which is, of course, the entire reason that I made it. But as far as the data pack that I'm most proud of and was happiest to work on, I think I would have to say the Fortress of War. It didn't seem like people enjoyed the videos quite so much, especially the second one, but I'm really happy with the manner that I went about creating all the systems. All the models and animations are some of the best work I think I've ever done, and all the systems are really fine-tuned and accurate and performant. So I think it's just one of the best data packs I've ever made, even though it's unlikely that a lot of people are ever going to play with it. I think that's enough of having a bunch of Powerups fight in a very flat area. Let's go ahead and build a nice looking arena and make it so that some of you guys can participate in these fights. Here's what I've built for the arena that the mannequins will fight in. I spent a little time on the Coliseum itself, but obviously the main attraction is the actual fighting pit down here. We've got two hills that create a nice little kind of funnel here in the middle where I hope and expect a lot of fighting is going to take place. We've got a relatively flat area all around the perimeter, which is where most of the mannequins are going to spawn in at the start of a given fight. We do have a few trees just to kind of break things up, as well as short grass, which shouldn't get in the way of the pathfinding at all. And I also added in a cave in each hill, though I expect that these are probably going to cause some issues for pathfinding, but in theory that's going to be a fun problem to solve. I made some stands up here for the Colosseum, though I don't think I'm going to fill them with anything, but in theory it would be fun to have some mannequins kind of jumping up and down in here. And then as you can see, I decorated it with a lot of copper that has diamond blocks behind it, as well as these banners that have K's for Powerup and P for Patreon. And that's because specifically the fans that I'm going to implement as mannequins to fight in this arena are going to be my Patreon supporters. I reached out to my Patreon supporters ahead of time and let them know that I would be making this video so that they could send me their in-game usernames so I could spawn them in with their actual skins. Not everybody ended up responding, and a few of them do have some default skins, but that's okay. I'm still going to implement all of my Patreon supporters. Just the ones that didn't send me the usernames are going to also have those default skins, and I'll just use their Patreon username. We can go ahead and toggle their combat so that they fight each other, and we get a very basic idea. Basically exactly the same system that we've already been working with all the Powerups, but with a little more interest and excitement going on. They are only dealing 1 damage to each other each, so this fight's going to go on for a little bit without swords to speed things up. But let's see, it looks like Ryalevsky came out on top of that one. Now, just spawning all these in with spawn eggs every time I want to test them isn't going to be really a good system. So I think I'm going to summon some markers all around the perimeter here so that whenever I want to start an organized fight, it'll just randomly spawn all the mannequins, all the Patreon supporters all around the perimeter here, and then they'll start to move towards each other and fight each other. In theory, as long as all of the fighters are not completely on opposite sides of the arena from each other, there should be enough movement that the one that maybe spawns over here should move over here, and then as they fight maybe in the middle here, around here, one of them will win, and then there'll be another winner over here, and then they'll move and converge in the river here. That's the idea anyway. Let's get those markers summoned. I have this repeating command block placed here that will make all of the marker entities I've placed emit some happy villager particles so that we can see them. So all these little green dots that are all around the ground here, there's actually none over here, which is sort of a mistake. But there's a bunch all around this section of the perimeter. I've put some on top of the trees because I thought that would be kind of a fun starting position. But all around the perimeter is where most of the spawn points are. I've also got a couple up here on the hills, both the small and the large one, and then there's not one up in this tree because there's already one right here. Hopefully with how spread out they are, even though there's none right here in the middle, this will help some of the mannequins end up moving towards the middle where there's a little bit more visibility and they'll be able to pathfind towards their targets. As we start and watch one of these fights, let's answer another AMA question. This is another one from Patreon supporter Sepheron, who's running around here somewhere, and they ask what initially inspired me to make my Stronghold datapack, the Biome Strongholds datapack. And it was mostly just because I thought it would be an interesting challenge. Since strongholds can't be easily recreated with jigsaws because of the guaranteed end portal, I wanted to see for one if it could be done, which is why I made the kind of proof of concept at the beginning of the Desert Stronghold video. And when it ended up working, I figured it would be pretty easy and pretty fun to expand it out into a full stronghold design. So it seems like now all the fighting has ceased, and we definitely have some stragglers here. These two are locked in a standoff. It seems at one point they probably had each other as their targets, but now there's trees in the way, so they can't see each other, and since they don't have any other AI to like idly wander around, they're never going to see each other. They're just stuck here. We also have a couple of people that are way off on one side of the perimeter, so Craig's cottage right here can't see anybody because this hill's in the way. And same over here, we've got Taythath over here, and I thought I saw one more, but maybe not. So we certainly have some pathfinding issues to figure out. I think that could potentially be helped by having some equipment spawn periodically throughout the arena during the fight that the mannequins can pathfind towards as sort of secondary objectives if they can't see any mannequins. That'll hopefully just get them moving and back into visibility range for some of the other fighters. Before we do that though, let's answer another AMA question. This one comes from Discord user Scout, who asks, will I ever do any other structures? And of course, they're referring to the fact that so far I've only done strongholds and nether fortresses from among the vanilla structures. And I do hope to do more. I think it depends a lot on what people are excited about and whether I can work it into my schedule to create something that'll be fun and exciting. So I've added what I'm calling a gear up. These are going to be things that spawn throughout the arena, throughout the fight, as well as at the start. And it has an item display that has a pig riding on it. If we turn on hitboxes, you'll see that the pig is very, very small and invisible, and then it's rotating along with the item display. In addition to the stone and diamond swords, I've also implemented 2 types of boots and 2 types of armor. These boots right here are jump boots, so the patrons are going to run towards it, and then when they hit the pig, they'll get equipped with those jump boots, and that is going to make it so that they have an increased jump height, which looks super silly and fun. The diamond chestplate just gives them some extra armor, so they'll go and break that, equip it, and now they're going to be a lot harder to take out. Actually, only just a little bit harder. Provides 2 armor points, which is going to be enough to protect from some unarmed damage and possibly even from the stone sword at least a little bit, but diamond swords are going to be able to get through pretty easily. These gold boots are speed boots, so if a patron equips those, then they're going to be able to move towards their target way, way faster. Doesn't necessarily help at all, but it is, I think, a cool and interesting power-up. It's certainly going to give them an advantage when they're running towards other pieces of gear that are spread throughout the arena. And then the golden chest plate, unlike the diamond chest plate, doesn't provide armor, but does provide a health boost. So players that have the gold chest plate equipped are going to have a little bit more health. They also get healed when they equip it so that they can take advantage of that health. And that also is obviously just going to make it a lot harder for them to be taken out by other unequipped players. And then, like I said, we also have both of the swords available to be spawned and equipped by the fighters. I've spawned some markers to act as spawn points for specifically the equipment that'll spawn throughout the fight, and these should hopefully help fill in some of the holes between the various spawn points. So there weren't any player spawn points over here, but there are some power-up spawn points that might draw some initially spawning fighters into this little cranny here. There's also some here in the river as well as up near and on these hills to again just try and draw the fighters, especially out of these little gullies and up to higher ground where it might be easier to spot other fighters. Let's go ahead and start a fight, and as we do, we'll see the equipment get spawned, and I'll go ahead and answer another AMA question here. So this one comes from Discord user appletree, who asks what my favorite New in Town plot that I've designed is. And I think I would probably have to say the Homestead. It was one of the earlier additions after the relaunch of New in Town based on a suggestion by one of my early playtesters, and I was really happy with both the idea of it and what it helped entail for the project, as well as just the overall aesthetic design. I think it's one of the nicest looking structures in the pack, and I'm just really happy with the way it turned out and the way that it has ended up getting used, both for my own play sessions as well as other players. A little hard to tell, but I think now we do only have one fighter left who's just going around and collecting all the gear. I've made it so that they don't deprioritize gear that they might already be wearing, especially so that potentially a mannequin will swap between various gears throughout the fight. Obviously, in that case, Apocalyptic Neon already had some golden boots and went ahead and equipped some more, but if those were copper boots, she would still go for them and equip them. Oh, we did have a second fighter, and Apocalyptic Neon was able to take him out. Super nice. I don't think I see anybody else. Let's check this cave down here and see if somebody's stuck in here. I think I did put a power-up spawn point either in this cave or in the other one, so it is going to be possible for some mannequins to go and hide in there and be super sneaky until eventually they make their way out as one of the other mannequins or maybe a power-up comes in range on either side. But it looks like Apocalyptic Neon has won this one after swapping out their golden boots for the copper ones, and that seemed to have helped take out that final fighter. Now, having the gear spawn throughout the fight, I think really adds a lot to the experience. It certainly is doing its job of making the fighters move around the arena more so that we can stop them from just kind of standing still and get them into some actual fights until only one remains. However, frankly, I don't think this would be a proper fight unless it was pay to win. So I've made it so fighters will spawn with some random gear when they get spawned in, but the amount of gear that they spawn with and which ones is going to vary depending on the tier of Patreon supporter that they are. So Craig's Cottage is a wizard tier supporter, so they get a sword as well as some boots. Settler tier supporters might only spawn with a sword, and if I had any Dragonkind supporters, they would also have a chest plate. They would get the full loadout. By the way, I don't think I've mentioned that I plan to use this Patreon arena at the end of all of my future videos. So it'll kind of play in the background and all my current patrons will fight each other, and then we'll say congratulations to the winner at the very end. There won't be any prize or anything, but if you want that extra chance of winning based on your starting spawning loadout, consider checking out my Patreon. Now, the equipment spawning is all well and good, but I think it would be really fun to also include some more kind of passive power-ups and abilities that can spawn throughout the fight. So I think I'll get to work on those next. Along with the gear spawn egg, I've also added this new power-up spawn egg so that we can test and take a look at what the power-ups look like. Unlike for the gear, the item display for the power-ups is just going to display this player head that looks like a present, like a gift box, and all the power-up types are going to use the same display. So we won't know as observers which power-up it's going to give the patron that attacks it. There are 4 types of power-ups, so let's see how testing this goes when I can't actually tell what they are before a patron attacks it. So we'll spawn somebody in, he'll attack the power-up, he's got those jump boots so that it makes it a little silly, and it looks like he got the invincibility power-up. So he's gonna have these ton of undying particles for I think about 6 seconds, and during that time, they'll be invincible. Very similar to something like Super Smash Bros. It's not a huge power-up, but it might be enough to take out a fighter that has a diamond chestplate equipped. Let's try somebody else and see what they get. Okay, so this one has the size upgrade. That's going to make them a little slower, but obviously quite a lot bigger. That helps with visibility and also gives them some extra health and attack damage. That also only lasts 6 seconds, so again, not a huge buff, but enough to potentially make a big difference in a very close fight. Spawn somebody else here and see what they get, and this one got the Ring of Fire power up. That's also only about maybe 6 to 10 seconds or so, a little bit longer, and during that time, anybody within that Ring of Fire is going to be set on fire, except for the wielder, except for whoever got the power up. So that's going to, again, give them a short but potentially major advantage, especially in a group fight. And then the last power-up, if we can get to it, is just a simple heal. Yep, so they'll get those hearts, they'll get a little bit of regeneration. That's going to help them get all the way up to full health, even and especially if they have a golden chestplate on, since that gives them a lot of extra health, or if they have already had their size increased by previous power-ups. You can really chain those together. And of course, it's just going to help anybody if they've taken some damage. So when it gets down to those last 2 fighters, if one person has taken a lot of damage but is going around for a lot of power-ups because they can't see that other fighter, then they might be better equipped once they actually get into that fight, even if that other fighter has better equipment but didn't get any power-ups. So let's get another fight started as I answer another AMA question. This one comes from King Sisyphus, who asks what games I have or play, and specifically have I played Terraria or RLcraft. Now, I haven't played Terraria or RLcraft, I just truly haven't had any interest in them. Frankly, why would I play anything besides Minecraft? But in all seriousness, outside of Minecraft, I tend to play a lot of single-player games. I love the Elder Scrolls. I've played both Oblivion and Skyrim, and I'm looking forward to Elder Scrolls 6 eventually. And I also think that Portal 2 and Subnautica are some of the best games ever created. I think they are essentially perfect, and they just totally capture everything that I love about video games. Seems like we might have our winner down here is Golo, who has a stone sword and some copper boots. Doesn't look like they ever got a chest plate equipped, which is pretty surprising. I wasn't paying super close attention to what power-ups they may have gotten, but I definitely saw some power-ups throughout the fight. And now the fight is over, all of those power-ups and equipment have been removed from the battlefield, so we know there's no other mannequins hiding in a cave or anything. Oh, it looks like for this fight, though, we have ended up in a situation where one of the mannequins is just barely inside this cave. Sepheron is kind of hiding. Oh, looks like he was able to spot another power-up, so he was able to get out of that, but he was stuck there for a little while. And clearly there must be another mannequin hiding somewhere. Yes, looks like they're over here. They can't see any power-ups yet. One is bound to spawn eventually, or Sepheron, and now they'll get to engage with each other. Yeah, Sepheron definitely had the advantage there. Diamond chestplate, fire power-up, didn't matter that Dame had that diamond sword. So the power-ups in the equipment are doing their jobs. The mannequins are moving around the arena even if they aren't fighting other mannequins, and since those power-ups and equipment continue to spawn throughout the fight into new locations, as long as somebody isn't truly backed into a corner, they should always have that opportunity to move elsewhere. However, to help just a little bit more, I think I am going to make it so that occasionally fighters will be able to select a few random targets that they don't have line of sight for, just to get them moving a little bit more. And then of course, they'll move a little bit out of the way, and then they'll check and see, okay, do I still have line of sight? And if they don't, then of course they will try to find new line of sight with other things, and hopefully they'll be able to since they've just moved out from the corner they might have been in. I've also added a few other bells and whistles, so let's go ahead and start a fight. That's going to teleport me into this optimal position as the fighters all get started. They've got their initial loadouts. We've already got some power-ups going on. Ring of Fire over there. We've got some equipment. Ooh, they've got a diamond chestplate on. We've got some new power-ups that have spawned. And it looks like we've got somebody going into the cave. These might be our last two fighters. They're getting respectively geared up until eventually they're going to see each other and converge. Oh, it looks like that's happening right about now. This tree's getting in the way a little bit. Looks like somebody lost sight, but one didn't. And Dame Jormund is our victor. We get a nice little victory circle up here in the sky, some fun fireworks and things, and the random targeting seemed to work really, really well. As soon as Dame Jormund did not have sight of anybody, any other fighters, then they just randomly went and tried to target something else and went for some other power-ups or gear, and allowed somebody else to try and come in for a sneak attack, but then Dame was able to take it out. I'll change to spectator as another fight starts here and go and answer another AMA question. This one comes from Incor II, who asks what my favorite series is on my channel. I've only got a few series as far as I consider them. Biome Strongholds is of course one, but I also have a few survival series, including playing New in Town, as well as two other data packs that I made exclusively for those Let's Play series. And I would say that my favorite is probably the Secret Shop series. Oh, looks like we've got somebody coming in for the win. Yep, and it is Terrion Terra. But yes, I would say the Secret Shop series is probably one of my favorites that I've played on my channel. It wasn't quite as narratively structured as the Abandoned Tower series, and obviously not super content heavy in the way that the New in Town series was, but I think it was one of the most polished and interesting projects that I made for a series on the channel. Once again, I do expect for these fights to appear at the end of every video from now on. I think that'll be really fun. And so as I'm going over my normal end of video spiel, like and subscribe, all that, then we'll get to watch all of my Patreon supporters fight each other and see who comes out on top that time. It should be essentially random, just like here we've got Sepheron, who is not any of our previous winners, so it should be different every time. And so let's answer the final AMA question as we overlook this Patreon fight. This one is another one from Discord user appletree, who asks what my most challenging project to date of the AMA has been, and how did I improve from before I started. Looks like Alex Hall is our winner here. Congratulations this time, Alex. And I realize I keep giving this as an answer, but I think probably the most challenging project would have been the Fortress of War. In particular, it wasn't a project that I was planning on splitting into two videos, and I really wish I didn't have to, but the scope just got out of hand with all the animated entities in particular. I wanted to have the boss included in the first video along with all the armor, the custom foods, but it was already getting too long with all the other animated entities, both to develop and to actually record. So I knew I was going to have to split it, and I really wish I didn't have to do that. I hope this has been an interesting project and an interesting AMA video. If you've enjoyed, please remember to like and subscribe for all kinds of World Gen, custom structure, and data pack content. And if you'd like a chance to be featured in these Patreon fights in future videos, please consider joining my Patreon to get access to early exclusive packs. Looks like our winner once again for the end of this video is Sepheron. So, congratulations Sepheron, and thanks for watching!